The Exorcists are a strange and unusual chapter of loyalist space marines, their dark mysterious past and their odd methods of operation heavily classified by the Ordo Malus of the Inquisition. In this video we're going to show exactly how to paint the red and black armour of the Exorcist Space Marines, using this Primaris Intercessor which we've already undercoated with Chaos Black spray. Once that's dry, it's time to apply the first base coat on the miniature. We're going to paint the red sections of the armour first of all, and for this we're going to use Corn Red. Grab your large base brush and let's get started. Let's take some Corn Red from the pot and onto our palette here like so. Now with a base paint like Corn Red, it's important to add a touch of water here to thin it down a little bit to help it go on the model real smooth. Perfect. Then load our brush up and onto our Space Marine. Here on the miniature, we're applying the Corn Red all over the red sections of the armour. Essentially that's most of the Space Marine apart from the shoulder pad trim and the backpack, which we'll paint black later on. Try as hard as you can not to hit areas of the model that aren't going to be black, but that's not a problem if you do. We're going to go back and touch those up with a bad and black before we move on to the next stage. Also, you'll note as it's going on, you may need a couple of coats to get a nice solid colour of Corn Red. Not a problem at all. Let the first coat dry and apply a second coat over the top. And that's it. That's our red base coat applied all over the armour. Alright, up next let's shade down into the recesses of the power armour. And here we're going to use a contrast paint, Black Templar, as it's perfect for this job. Grab your small layer brush for this one. Let's take some Black Templar from the pot and apply it to our palette here. Now we're not going to thin this down at all as contrast paints come pre-thinned. Just make sure we haven't got too much paint on the brush. We want a nice fine point on the small layer brush here. Perfect. Then onto our Space Marine. Here we're applying this into the recesses between the armour plates all over the model. So very carefully just applying it like so into the deep recesses like this. This is called a recess or a pin shade. And we're going to do it all over the entire red armour of the Marine. This will take some time, but it's really worth spending as long as you can to get it nice and neat. Don't worry if you do make a mistake and make the shade too blotchy, you can always go back later on and reapply the Corn Red to tidy it up. There we go, that's the shade done in the recesses of our red armour. Alright, up next let's add some highlights to the red armour, and for this we'll start with Wazdaka Red for a slightly thicker highlight. Then over the top of that, a thinner highlight of Squig Orange will be applied. For both of these we're using our small layer brush. Let's take some Wazdaka Red from the pot and onto our palette here. Now here we're going to add a touch of water in, just to make sure that highlight is subtle and the paint goes on real smooth. We're also making sure we've got a nice fine point on the brush. There we go, perfect. Then onto our Space Marine. Here we're applying this highlight onto the edges of all the armour panels, so we're just very carefully working it around the edges of all the armour panels like this. Now this is going to take a long time to paint the entire Space Marine like this, but it's absolutely worth taking the time to get these highlights as crisp as you possibly can do. Again, don't worry if you make a mistake, you can always go back later with a Corn Red and cut into those highlights. This highlight's going to be slightly thicker than the second one, so it doesn't matter if it's a little bit of a thicker line like so, absolutely fine, just help define the armour plates all the way over the model. With that done, we're adding a second highlight here with Squig Orange onto the red areas. Here is a thinner highlight on the very, very, very edges of the armour plates, so just make sure you're taking time here to be as neat as you possibly can. And that's the red armour complete. Alright, up next let's have a look at painting the black areas of power armour. Now all Exorcists have a black power pack on their backs, and ours is going to be from the 5th company, so we're going to do the shoulder pad trim black too. First of all, going to go back and make sure all the areas we covered with the bad and black are still black. So we'll do that first, and once that's done, we'll highlight those areas with Eshin Grey, and then another highlight of Dawnstone after that. First of all, that bad and black tidy up. For this we're going to our medium layer brush. Let's take some paint from the pot and onto our palette. Again here, just a touch of water, just to make sure it's nice and thin when it goes on the miniature. A bit more, there we go. Then onto our model. Here we're just touching up those black areas, making sure anywhere we've made a mistake before is still black. There we go, nice pure black is what we're looking for on these areas. Next up, we've got our small layer brush out, and here we've got some thinned down Eshin Grey, and we're going to apply that as a highlight all over the black areas of the armour as well. Next up, we'll take some Dawnstone. This time we've thinned it down again with quite a bit of water, and we're applying it to the very edges of the black armoured sections. Here we're using the edge of the brush to very carefully make sure we only get the absolute edges and vertices of the black areas. And with the black sections of the armour done, that's our armour complete. And that's how you can paint Exorcist Space Marines for your army. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Happy painting.